I would like to talk about before we start to talk about the rules of the game is this movie called La Grande Illusion or The Grand Illusion, made in 1937. This movie was probably the most popular and the most successful film that Jean Renoir made. The movie showcased the friendship between a French and a German officer during World War II. And as you can imagine, during World War II, the French and the German were actually enemies. So it's quite an interesting story. For those of you who have seen Joint Security Area, this Korean film about a friendship between a North Korean officer and a South Korean officer, it has a very similar theme running through it, and you should have a look at it if you have not seen it. So basically what Jean Renoir used to say about this film is that if you put a French financier and a French farmer and they sit both at the same table, they may not have a lot of things to say. However, if you put a French farmer with a Chinese farmer, they may have everything in common. So what he's trying to say with this movie is that we are all brothers and sisters, and if we have similar interests, it doesn't matter which race we are part of, we can actually have great conversation together. So I want to showcase you a scene of this film, and what is quite interesting is that it's a long take and staging in-depth scene, and this scene was done before Citizen Kane. So Citizen Kane is a movie that is very well known for a long take is staging in depth. However, there were movies before Citizen Kane that were doing more or less what Citizen Kane is recognized for. So I would like you to have a look at the scene, and you will notice that he begins the scene by shooting a close-up of the character, and then after that pull back the camera so we can see the entire scene running through.
Et dis donc, Elfé, tu vas à Épernay? Oui. Dans combien de temps? Dans une demi-heure. Tu vas avec la camionnette? Oui. Bah attends-moi, tu vas m'emmener. D'accord, je t'amène. Joséphine? Eh oui, Joséphine. Là, t'es pas le seul. Eh, je m'en fous, petite tête. Dis donc, maréchal. Hein? Il y a là un type de l'état-major. Il faut que tu l'emmènes. Un gars de l'état-major? Bah dis donc, il tombe mal. Ah oui, Joséphine encore. Eh oui, Joséphine. Ah là, ça va te mener tout ça. Enfin, elle attendra. À tes ordres, mon capitaine. Allez, viens, vite, viens. Passe-moi dans le camembert.
Okay, now let's have a look at the rules of the game. So the rule of the game was made in 1938, but as the team in class presented, the film had a very bad reception. So people really hated the film, and I think because it kind of hit something very close to home. In 1952, there was a version of 81 minutes that was cut, and the movie magazine Sight and Sound ranked 10th among the greatest films of all time. After that, there was another version recreated with the help of Jean Renoir that lasts 1 hour and 46 minutes. That's the version that you saw today. And the poll placed the film always in second and third position. There is also this filmmaker called François Truffaut who felt that the movie was excellent, very good, and he had numerous screenings. And when he's asked about what are some of your favorite films, this one will always come out. So he has influenced several filmmakers, and I think in terms of story, a lot of people were inspired by it. So what's really the inspiration for the story? Well, it first started with the kind of music these bourgeois, these rich people are listening to. So from the music, after that, Renoir thought, oh, then what kind of places they live? And that's where he thought of the countryside, the castle, and all the behavior that they would have in those places, all these very rich setting and parties that they will have at those places. So, and after that, he thought of who are the character of this film and what kind of behavior, what kind of attitude they have. And that's how he thought of the rules. What are the rules that the bourgeoisie follow, and what they think they should do, and what are the things that they should not do. And that's what we will talk about a little bit later. For those of you who are a little bit confused about who was who, this is a little bit of a summary of all the love triangle going on in the film. So let's start with the right side with Lisette. Lisette is married with Schumacher. However, she has some kind of love affair with Marceau. And of course, Schumacher quite angry at this. So that's why he's trying to kill Marceau half of the movie. Movie starts with Andre. So we have Andre on the left side, who is madly in love with Christine. However, Christine don't really reciprocate his love. She says at some point that she loves him, but yeah, she would say that she loves so many people, so it's not very clear. Christine is married with Robert, and Robert has an affair with Geneviève. So that gets quite complicated. We have also Christine that kind of says that she's in love with Octave, and also runs away with Monsieur Saint-Aubin. And it's with Monsieur Saint-Aubin that at some point Andre will fight with toward the 3/4 of the film. And finally, you have Jackie, who is very protective of Andre, and she also says that she's in love with him, but he will quite honestly tell her that he's not in love with her. So she has to move on from there. One of the characters the most interesting in this film is probably Christine, because we have to understand why she's behaving that way. So one of the first conversations that she has with Lisette, she asks Lisette, "Oh, you've been married for a while, how your husband behave with you?" And then Lisette will describe, "Oh, my husband likes to touch me, likes to do this and that, but the more we give, the more they want." And then Christine listened to that very silently, and she kind of say, "Oh, well, it doesn't seem that she has this kind of relationship with Robert." So that's the first thing. Another conversation that she has with Lisette also, they are talking about having children, and she asks Lisette, "Oh, don't you want children?" And she says, "Oh no, children takes a lot of time." And Christine would say, "Oh yes, they takes a lot of time, but at the same time you don't have to think about all the other things that kind of bothers you, it keeps you busy." So in that way, we can already guess that Christine has a very empty life, not a very fulfilling marriage with Robert, and that is not really giving her what she needs. We also understand, because of the conversation she has with Octave and other character, that she's not a French, she's from Austria. So she's kind of lonely in this country. She doesn't have family members, so her family is really her husband and the friends around her. And that's the other thing. When she has this conversation with Octave says, you cannot behave like that with men. With me, it's okay. I understand that it's friendship, but it's not really okay to go and hug everybody and kiss everybody. So it seems that there is some kind of disconnect here of how she should behave and how people around her interpret her behavior. So overall, a very complex character. Robert is also a very complex character, because on one hand, he doesn't want to lose Christine, he loves her. On the other hand, he has this love affair with Geneviève, and he doesn't know how to get rid of it. You have Octave also that seems to be very close with Christine and with Andre. So there is the idea that he doesn't want to betray his friendship with Andre, and at one point he betrays that friendship. But also he cannot help himself, but he loves Christine as well. So that's a lot of love triangle. Yeah. This scene is a good example of the love triangle going on, and a good example of long take and staging in depth. We first have Schumacher looking for his wife, then we see Christine with Saint-Aubin, and Schumacher finds his wife with Marceau, and then we see Andre looking at Christine and looks very jealous. Then we go back to Marceau and Lisette. They try to get out of there, but they are stopped by Schumacher. And then we have Christine and Saint-Aubin, who are also leaving. And you can see that Christine have a final look at Andre and she disappears. Okay, we have a cut here, and you will notice that all the characters disappear behind different doors. So first we are looking at Christine and Saint-Aubin, and we have a little bit of humor here with Octave, who tries to remove his costume but cannot. Okay, so here we have Robert and Geneviève disappearing behind another door. Andre looking for Christine. We have Marceau hiding. And we have Schumacher looking for Marceau. So you can see that the way it's staged in depth is very creative. So we can actually see the different characters, where they go, where they disappear. So the blocking of actor, the staging in depth is very complex. You can see here we follow Octave. We see again Schumacher, Lisette, and Andre. So there are many scenes like this in the movie that tell us information about the story using the different planes of depth, the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. So very complex staging of action in general.